know, it is kind of fun, huh?
Yeah, I do. Oh, hey, everybody. I absolutely love going to concerts with all these guys.
Yeah, it's one of the perks of being here. If there's a concert nearby, we're usually at least a handful of us.
Tim out, it's a perk to go with us? With me?
Good point.
It's a perk with everybody but
the antithesis of a perk.
Yeah. It's Q&A, guys.
Yeah, welcome to PDQ A. This is where we just kind of free form. We take your questions, PDQ or even just kind of IT related. If we don't know, we'll lie.
We'll lie horribly to you.
Mm-hmm. So, you know what? Before we start, I wanted to show one thing since
Patch Tuesday and auto downloads. Huh?
Yes. Well, we've got I just wanted to show you. You know, for those who use the old auto deployment, now it's auto download. We have Adobe Air. Notice that's an old version of Air. If you can zoom in, it's version 27. And there's a new version that came out. If you look at this Adobe Air, there's the schedule. It's going to run again in 12 hours, right? But if you take a peek, it's version 2704. If you go to the package library and look at Air, look at this. We've got, or if you click on the one auto download approval waiting, yeah, there's a new version 28, but we had set to only approve after 3 days. If you see this, you've already tested it out, you want to have this thing run, you want to approve it, you can highlight any of those that are awaiting approval and click approve now. If you don't and you have auto approval set, then once that 3 days is hit,
it'll go automatically.
Correct, but let's go ahead and hit approve now, and you'll see that this Adobe Air will change this that package from 27. You can see the download, and now that same package, which is attached to a schedule or two, is now version 28. So
bang, done.
If you've already done your testing, don't want to have to wait whatever your approval setting was, then you can go ahead and approve it early.
I love auto download.
We saw that hanging there and thought, well, let's bring that up. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on some questions.
Our first question comes from our good friend from OKC. It is Gene, the dancing machine. I have 2 auto deployments for monthly rollup, one with minimal auto approve for testing, the other 7 days. When the new rollup comes out, all systems fall in the pre-built monthly rollup old collection I am using on the second deployment. Since the ones updated in the first deployment aren't in the target history of the second, it installs the old rollup again. Do I just need to create my own collection which excludes my test group? Thanks.
Hey Gene. Okay, so you are correct that the target history of a schedule does not span to other schedules. So if you look at Adobe Air, which you're not going to see any, the target history was just reset because we just barely got a new version. You won't see any computers from another schedule. But the fact of the matter is, you're saying that you're deploying to this collection. Go to the collection library, and it was Windows updates, I believe.
Yeah,
is what you were talking about.
It was like Windows 10 old, I think.
Yeah, so we'll just say maybe 16 or 1703 cumulative. You're talking about the old. If you've had your test, the first schedule, which just has a handful of computers, get pushed out, you need to make sure those are rescanned. They might need to be rebooted and then rescanned, but you're saying that they're still in that collection when the second schedule kicks off. That just means you need to make sure that those are scanned. So make sure, number one, if you are doing a scan after deployment, hopefully you are, make sure that whatever scan profile you're using does include the hotfixes.
Yes.
So if you're using applications, it might be a good idea just to go out to inventory
and alter that applications to run for hotfixes.
Yeah, just make sure you've got it. So if you're saying scan the application scan profile after deployment, make sure that hotfixes
is added.
Is a scanner that's listed there, and it could be that it gets updated, but you don't. But it needs to be rebooted before that patch is shown as having been installed. In that case, what you're going to want to do is schedule a reboot on those test machines. Remember, you can do that from the package itself. So if you've got a schedule, let's say we'll just do it with, so we don't have to demo the whole thing. Let's say we wanted to add it to Adobe Air, and I would do this on the test package that you're talking about. If you have it scheduled, especially after hours, create a post step. do a post step and just do a reboot on that post step. You can always just play it safe and just say make sure to only let's turn off servers.
Never, yeah.
In fact, if you're only doing Windows 10, you just say Windows 10. But just do a reboot on Windows 10, and then after that reboots, you have your scan schedules. It should have your scan schedules set up. You should be okay. You're pointing to a collection that should not have those.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do some digging as to why that's happening.
What else we got?
Dear Shane and Lex, I exclude my server's subnet from PDQ Deploy to prevent accidental deployments to them. Yet I would like to manage deployments / auto deployments to them for things such as 7-zip, Notepad++, BGInfo, etc. What would you recommend? I am using PDQ Central Server with 3 admins, if that helps. Kindest regards, Chad B.
Hey, Chad.
Hello, Chad. All right, so the feature that Chad is talking about is he goes into preferences for deploy, and you've got the target filters, and the target filters is a way to specify computers, or in this case he's talking about a subnet. Why don't you enter a subnet in there, Lex? He's excluding a subnet that only contains servers. So Lex is going to type in a subnet here. Make sure to put the mask down.
/24.
/24, go ahead and add that. So now if we ever try to deploy to computers that are in that subnet, they're going to fail.
Yep.
This is a global setting, and so I think the question you're asking is, I want this setting to prevent those servers from getting deployed unless
Yeah.
I want them to be deployed. Well, this is a global setting, and this is there for just that purpose. I don't want an accidental deployment to them. Let me just go ahead and delete that.
There's a couple of different ways. Obviously, you're going to have to take that off if you want to do any deployments to those.
Yeah, you could take it off, do the deployments, and then add it back in.
No.
Otherwise, it really comes down to your processes and procedures. If you want to take it out, you just go do some training on all your admins saying don't ever deploy to these computers. Or what I would do if I were you, if you don't have that confidence, then you just need to remove that subnet, do the deployments, and then put them back in there. That does make it difficult for scheduling, but this is there for those accidental deletions, and it is global. Applies to, if you're using Central Server, to all the consoles connecting to that server, or just any deployment coming from that.
Another thought, right? So you got Central Server. You could actually leave Central Server alone, load again another one on your machine that you control, and then do it from there. Mm-hmm. But again, that's another place you're going to have to manage it. So
yeah, there's a couple of ways of doing it, but we don't have a way of saying override the global filters.
Yeah, no.
That's not a feature.
Chris he's doing
wide grin. I just recently found out from Colby that we introduced in 14 or 15. There's actually a command line one for the PDQ deploy command to override target filters. He just mentioned that in the chat.
Really?
You can from the command line, just not from the actual application itself.
Huh.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I certainly haven't heard any discussion about making that something that you could override here. But Colbster, if you might want to post an example of that for the chat, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Colby.
And in honor of Star Wars premiering this evening, hi PDQ Jedi Masters. I have a schedule with a package to do Windows Update. The schedule has offline settings with wake-on-lan marked, but the package has used settings from preferences, and the preferences doesn't have the send wake-on-lan marked. Which one prevails? Thanks, and may the Force be with you. Sincerely, Federico D.
All right. Federico, just so you know, I subscribe to the dark side of the Force personally.
The Force doesn't acknowledge your existence. All right, so let's answer this. Okay, so to answer your question, we can draw this out. To answer your question, well, let's talk about precedence. So
okay.
if your schedule, go ahead and put that question back up real quick. So you're saying the schedule has offline setting. The schedule says send wake-on-lan. And what you're talking about, let's go to a schedule real quick, and I'll just show you this.
Offline settings.
Oh yeah, go to offline settings.
There we go.
Center that. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that, JJ. So you're saying, the offline setting is, notice this one says use settings from packages. The package will say use the settings from preferences, and that's because of the precedence. So this will supersede a schedule or when you do a deploy once, that will supersede what you have set at the package level. So when we're talking about the offline settings, this has the highest precedence. An extra where that's not true is when you're talking about conditions. Step conditions have the highest. Let me see, is it Control-Shift-W?
Yep, there you go.
Which one did you use? Which side did you use?
That end.
All right.
Got to hold down the Windows key though.
Yeah, thank you. So here's the precedence for this would be, you got your preferences. Oh God, you're right.
No. We'll just talk
Go
about
ahead.
it. All right, preferences?
Yeah, preferences. Go ahead. So preferences is the first.
Okay, I'm not doing it, dude. My hand hits the screen, so.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so preferences
There you
hits
go.
first. Control-Shift-W.
Preferences is the first. That's the setting, obviously, in preferences. The next one would be the package level.
Yep.
So you can set that at the package. That's if you're in a package and you say, I want to go, and this works for credentials as well, or something like that. You go to your properties, and like in auto download or offline settings in this case, you could say we don't want to use the settings from preferences, we want to make this change. But then you can do something completely different at the deployment or schedule level that will overwrite the package. So package can override the preferences.
Schedule.
The schedule or deployment can override this. The only time where this will ever trump is when you're talking about the individual step conditions. If you have conditions that are set, go to a regular package. If you have conditions that are set on a particular step, say to run as a logged on user, that will override whatever you set run as at the deploy level. It's the only time conditions will go, the step has the highest precedence.
Yeah.
For something like send wake-on-lan, steps have no bearing, so it just goes preferences, package, deployment. So you should be good to go.
Dear Shane and Lex, hello everyone, and thank you for your time. He is so polite. We have a Tier 1 and 2 setup in IT, with each group having a different range of permissions. Is there a way to set up multiple service accounts for PDQ Deploy and permissions for who can use said accounts? For example, having an account that can deploy to servers that are a Tier 1 IT group could not access. Thanks and happy holidays, Patrick H.
Happy holidays.
Patrick, not in this version, no. We haven't set up roles yet. So in order to get that, we're taking these, as you notice, each of these features that we've added since Central Server. Every version, we're helping you lock it down. We've introduced the concept of private packages. We do have plans. It's being worked on right now to allow you to kind of lock a package, where you can build it. It's you don't want it private. You want it to be able to be deployed, but you want to mark it as read-only. So we're working on that to say this is a read-only package, but I want you to deploy it. And we will probably, no guarantees, we'll probably get to a point where we start doing types of roles, where you can, perhaps one person has a role for deploy but not build, the other has a build, not deploy. We haven't finalized that yet. Remember, we're largely we were designed around, just one or two admins. The Central Server is just expanding a little bit, but you'll see some new features in regards to that. But
The nice thing is there's work being done on it.
Yeah.
So
If you do want to get around that, then you could always do kind of what Lex had suggested, and that is create multiple consoles. But that's when I say consoles, like you have your Central Server, maybe a separate standalone console that only you use, or something to that effect. So, no, sorry.
Dear Shane and Lex, when switching from client mode to Central Server, is there a way to copy one's admin custom collections in inventory and auto deployments and deploy to the Central Server versions? Sincerely, Monica. Used to be a K, now it's an H.
Hey, Monica.
Hey, Monica. Okay, so I know Brig has written a very good forum post on this. When you move to Central Server, whatever console you initially upgrade, whether if it's deploy, then those packages and schedules are maintained once you upgrade from that console. Same with collections and reports. But if you have another admin that moves to client mode, and their console wasn't used in upgrading, yes, those will not be retained. In order to save those, you're literally going to have to just do an export and an import. So what I would recommend doing, let's say that we're going to move this one, I would take all the collections and then do the same thing with reports. You could either do a multi-select, something like that, or you can just move them all under one collection, right-click that top-level collection, export it. That will create a fairly large XML file in this case, since there's so many collections. And then just do an import, Control-I on the central server, and that will create those. But that's the way you do all those disparate consoles. That's how you do it. It's not a native feature to try to merge them. So export and then import.
Dear Shane and Lex, regarding PDQ Deploy via command line, is there a way to monitor whether a package has completed, success, or fail? Thanks in advance, Ryan J.
Ryan.
I'm assuming you're talking about from the command line, and I don't think so. Once you deploy it from the command line, you'll see it in the console as though it were kicked off, regular from a schedule or deploy ones. I don't think there's a way there's not a way to query.
Chris here.
Hey, Chris.
Hi. So there's no, with one of the commands that's already there, no native way, but you can do some database fun and actually watch as the values are being updated when the queries are running, when the actual deployments are running, wait for that to come back, and then act upon that from a script via PowerShell, because it's awesome. But other than that, no.
Yeah, there's not a native tool for that. I would have been surprised because
No.
I would never heard of that.
But I've done it in PowerShell, so it's definitely possible.
I will say this. Obviously, when you're talking about external tools accessing the database, just kind of be careful because of the way the database works, SQLite works. There's usually SQLite, that server process that handles all the deployments. That's the one thing that grabs data writes and grabs data from the database. And when you introduce a new process that's not managed by the background service, then you could start getting some database conflicts.
Corruption,
the database is currently in read only while it's doing this transaction, etc. Or you could actually lock out temporarily that background service. So just keep that in mind.
Be careful.
What Chris is talking about, though, you're not making a change to the database. You're merely querying it, so you should be okay if you want to do that. I just wanted to just draw that out. You want to be careful when you're accessing the database from another process besides the actual consoles or command line.
Dear Shane and Lex, in our environment, we use collections built from Active Directory, and we have multiple sites with their own OUs and multiple OUs under each site. Is there a way to get the total number of PCs to bubble up to that parent OU? Right now, it's site A, 0, but when I drill down, each sub-OU has the number of PCs, except when there are more OUs under that. Thanks in advance, Tiffany G.
So she's only talking. Are you talking? I guess I want to ask. Are you talking about? If you go back, if you can zoom in here, we've got some based off of our import settings. You can see these AD OUs there. And is she talking about? Is she talking about these, or is she talking about literal collections that you created, new dynamic collections based off of Active Directory? I'd like to know that. They are, if you notice, they're generally supposed to bubble up. So here you've got, let me see if I can find it, maybe go to the collection library. That might be a better one. So here we see we've got 4 in Notepad, 3 there, 1 there. That equals 4.
Math.
There's
Chris over there.
She chimed in. It's the ones that we were initially showing for the web and the AA labs there. It's the ones that are automatically
the actual AD ones. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually that's most likely going to be a limitation then that we just. It was probably a decision when we decided to import those and show, and then we added that counter afterwards. That's most likely just that we didn't want to add confusion. You could try creating collections. This is like a workaround, but create dynamic collections based off of the AD membership, and then create your hierarchy there and see if that bubbles up for you. Yeah. That should show it. We can take a peek at that. Let's take that. We'll take that offline and see if there's a reason why we should add those numbers after that. Try those collections. Yeah.
Can a package be deployed to an IP address? Sincerely, Jorlando D.
You can specify an IP address, and then we will attempt to deploy to whatever target owns that IP address. In fact, there's quite a few. I shouldn't say quite a few. I do know of customers that do this almost exclusively, where they've got static IPs and they know where they're going, and they didn't want to introduce DNS into it. So the answer is yes. You can type that in there, but just keep in mind that you want to make sure that IP address does in fact go to the target you're expecting. If in a dynamic environment, that you could be asking for trouble.
Yeah.
If you're deploying to a computer that uses
Got an IP,
DHCP, if it's DHCP reserved, then you're probably okay. But yes, you can.
Dear Shane and Lex, is it possible to trigger a package deployment from a client machine using a script or similar? For example, machines just imaged being prepped for deployment. Thanks, Shane and Lex. You're my only hope. Ethan H.
Hey, Ethan. Yeah, there's some remote magic that you're going to have to do. You can use PowerShell, or you can use something like PSExec to initiate a deployment, as long as you have the appropriate licensing. Just so you know, when you initiate that does count as
An admin.
an admin, a license. So you could, if you only have one license and you're trying to do this from a bunch of different target machines, you could end up having some problems. But that's kind of where the site license comes in, where people are saying, I want to use the SL license, so I don't have to worry about that. But we do, if you go to your command line, PDQ, go to the PDQ Deploy directory, type in PDQDeploy.exe, and you'll see the usage statement on how you can kick that off. We have a lot of webcasts.
I was going to say, Chris and I have done a webcast. I think we've got a couple of videos out there that actually take you through how to run that CLI. So.
That's actually fairly common, especially for those that have site license, to just say, I want to kick this off, whether it's PowerShell or PSExec.
Now, was he asking about imaging machines and having a kick
Well, he
off
was
there, or
saying
just
after
what?
the image, I'm assuming you've got a post step in whatever imaging solution you use that you want to kick off. In that case, that would fire off a script or something that you've written that would call out to the PDQ Deploy server and then initiate that PDQ Deploy exe, pipe in the name of the target as a target, the computer name as a target, and the deployment will kick off.
I want to add something here, because here's a way not to worry about licensing. If you have that machine imaged and put into like a new computer's OU, and you set up a schedule that runs, say, every 15 minutes or on the hour, and then you install your baseline, just have the last statement in your baseline be a PowerShell script that moves it into a staging OU, and you can accomplish the same thing that way.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. That's if you use something like OUs as your basis, and then you just have one package or a schedule that has a bunch of attached packages. So you just had to kick off one thing.
Yep.
Cool.
Dear Shane and Lex and DNS King Brig, wherever you are, DNS conflicts tend to cause a lot of failures when combined with a heartbeat trigger. Is there a way to have PDQ Inventory/deploy check that the online status is not a false positive before triggering a slew of jobs instead of having them all fail? Thanks and happy holidays, Patrick H.
Well, hey Patrick, this is probably going to be fairly unsatisfying, but really, really try to attack the effort. Focus your effort on attacking those DNS conflicts. See if you can't make DNS a little bit more robust. Yeah, and if you have to go to an external team, that's what I would do. The heartbeat process, right now, it just does a ping, and we are at the mercy of DNS. We'll do a ping to see if that computer is online, and if it responds to a ping, then it moves forward. Now, as we introduce coming up, probably not the very first version, but there's going to be an optional agent that is in the works. Once again, optional. We could, make plans to have that optional agent say, hey, do a check-in. Hey, I'm here, and this is me, and now what do you have waiting for me? And then it's not just a heartbeat polling of, oh, does this computer answer a ping? It's, hey, I am this computer. I know who I am. What do you have waiting for me? Yeah. But that's forthcoming. I would really, if you're having DNS conflicts,
you're going to have other issues just beyond
PDQ
deploying.
Yeah.
So, scavenging, look it up on our. Briggs got a great one. We've done a good webcast on it. So,
probably the biggest bang for your buck is DNS scavenging. Yeah.
Dear Shane and Lex, does the central server follow the scan profiles, and can it initiate scans on its own, or does a client console have to be connected first? Thanks, Dietrich K.
Hello, the central server
Does it all.
it's effectively the background service. When you're talking about, we'll go over here to scan profiles. So, depending on your schedule. So here we've got, look at the standard scan profile. Look at the triggers. This one says when a computer hasn't had this scan profile initiated in 7 days. You can add other triggers every day at 11 a.m. or every Saturday night at 5 or whatever. You can add multiple triggers. Heartbeat is also fairly popular, but no client has to be connected. It's just that the background service has to be running and the appropriate credentials have to be used. So that's the benefit. I mean, at middle of the night, no one's connected. Even the console, even your console
Server
app on the
closed.
central server is closed. That background service, welcome to the wonderful world of Windows services, that will still kick off. Yes, it follows those scan profiles, and no client needs to be connected.
Dear Shane and Lex, I feel like my PDQ Deploy GUI interface is dragging a bit when I do things like load the application, change focus from packages to schedules, or edit a package. It just seems like it was more responsive before I started deploying and adding more packages. What recommendations do you have for keeping the interface and database streamlined and responsive? Sincerely, Jim, I love my ink, M.
Yeah,
Hey.
cool tattoo, man. Number one, make sure you've upgraded to the latest version, and that's including these different point releases. So if you're on 14, but you're not on release 3, definitely install release 3. Mm-hmm. That's something we'd recommend because we have added a lot of kind of housekeeping and speed issue. We've resolved a lot of speed issues. Mm-hmm. So as far as that, Lex is probably going to pull up some best practices here. Go ahead.
Again, we got database optimization. That's going to help. And depending on how many deployments you're storing, you can go here and make sure that you're actually doing some cleanup of the deploy database. And again, you've got optimization
Go
here.
down to
and then
performance.
Under performance would be
Let's see. So we got. Let's actually go to deployments here. Sorry. Yeah, the cleanup. Under deployments in the cleanup, delete finished deployments after 30 days. We do have customers that put 0 there. That means never delete these old deployment histories or the records of the deployments. If you're having a lot of deployments, that's just adding to the size of the database. We recommend trying to put a reasonable
Tweaking
number
that a
there.
little bit, yeah.
30 days. Maybe you want. I know we have some customers. They have a policy that they have to at least have a record of the deployment for a year, so they have 365. The higher the number, or if you have 0, unlimited,
bigger your database.
the slower
gets.
the database will ultimately get. So I'd recommend doing that. Also, if you don't upgrade regularly, then Lex had gone to the database in preferences. Every now and then do an optimized database. And what that does is it just takes data that's been deleted, that space hasn't been reclaimed. The data is gone, but it hasn't been reclaimed. That effectively runs a SQLite vacuum command. And that speeds it up a little bit, shrinks the database slightly, and then speeds it up. So do optimize. Now, when you upgrade, optimize automatically happens. Every time you upgrade, we run an optimize. So if you're keeping up to date, then chances are, you don't need to do that as much. So, do we have any more questions?
Dear Shane and Lex, we use Intel AMT in our office in our system, so they ping even though they are not turned on. Is there anything that PDQ does to prevent the heartbeat from trying to deploy to them since they reply to a ping? Is there anything you would recommend at this point? Thanks, David Allen F.
Yeah, I've heard this once before. This is really where the optional agent ultimately will come in, where you're no longer wanting to rely to a ping. So these devices do respond to a ping, and that's all we're doing. We're simply doing an echo, an ICMP echo, and if that has echo request enabled, then it's gonna reply. And at that point, there's not much we can do because we're saying, oh yeah, this is responding. I mean, the ping really is kind of the lowest level. We just reach out there to see if it's there, and then we move forward. So you'll start seeing failures, obviously, if that doesn't work. You can enable wake-on-lan if you want, so that they do get booted up. for the deployment, you might want to look at doing that. Otherwise, hopefully the optional agent, we can nail that down.
You know what? I think Chris has got a comment.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so Colby's pointing out in the chat, for those who are watching this video, especially after it's made, he's looking for right now some documentation we have on how to kind of...
Did we implement that? It was a hidden feature then?
Yes, we have that. It's nothing native in the program. We have to do that hidden setting to do this for those who are affected by this, but we're looking for that. If we can find it, we'll post it, make sure it's on the bonus content, and so that they'll have available.
All right, and I keep on wanting to say David Allen. If it's pronounced differently, every time I see your name, I think of David Allen Co.
Yeah.
So David Allen or David Allen. Yeah, keep an eye on the chat, and maybe Colby, if we can't find it before we end, then we can post that. That's cool. I'm glad. So we did implement a hidden feature for that.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I'd heard about that just once before. I thought that is a pain.
Cool. What else we got? Oh, there it is.
Shane and Lex, is it possible to add a post step that if the install fails with a certain error code, it will then run an additional package and then try again? Sincerely, Ethan H.
Not without scripting. The way the error codes are processed, you can specify certain actions on error codes in a step. For example, coming over here, just opening up KeyPass. Go to a step. Notice this error mode. The default is, and the error mode is if a success or a return code. Remember, return codes, error codes, success codes, they're all the same thing.
Yes, yeah.
If a code is returned according to this step in KeyPass, if it's not 0, 1641, or 3010, it's considered a failure. Mm-hmm. The options are, what do you do when there's a failure? Usually you stop deployment with an error. You can continue, or you can stop deployment with success. If you continue, that just goes to the next step, and we don't retain what that previous error code was. What you'd have to do is actually do a lot of your steps from within a script, and that script then has the logic to look for certain return codes, and then make an action based off of that. But it's not something I would delve into lightly. Do you have anything you want to add on that one, Chris?
Mostly just the scripting portion of it. As we all know, that's always going to be my answer. You can do, and I've played around with, again, coming back to database stuff because that's fun. Actually keeping a track, running record of what all the steps are doing, what it's running, what the statuses are, so that in a script, looking at the database, actually acting upon that. Anyway, it's, yes, script, PowerShell.
All right.
Work, homework.
Dear Shane and Lex, in our environment, we have several machines with WMI and admin shares off. It was a radical change as the environment was under attack. Is there any way to enable them by using PDQ Deploy? Thanks, Marcio S.
Hey, Marcio. Okay, so WMI off. Wow. WMI off, you're going to run into a lot of problems with inventory. Most inventory scans are going to fail, or we have so many little fingers going into WMI at any one point. Admin shares off, obviously by default we require those admin shares. We require the admin dollar, which is the Windows directory. So if that is turned off, but you have the remote, you can still access the computers remotely using an administrator share. You can change that, but it's a global setting. It's one of the most rarely visited settings. I hesitate to mention it just because you can truly screw things up.
Just remember, if you don't do it right, bad things happen. Here.
Under preferences, under target service, you can specify the share that you go to and where that share resolves. So by default, it's admin dollar share admin arsenal, which is, once again, Windows admin arsenal directory. You can change that. You would have to have a share. If it's not going to be a default share, you'd have to create one on all your computers, say PDQ, share that, and then have that be the same path. So you could say something like PDQ / admin arsenal, and then that, once you change this default, then this will enable, this field will be enabled, and you can specify where that resolves, like C : PDQ. But then every computer
would have to have that.
This is a global setting. When we do a deployment, we go to the PDQ share, or whatever share you specify. So it's something that's global. It's not per machine. You have to have your computers set up with those shares. We introduced this feature years ago because there were some environments where they just were not allowed to use admin dollar, but they could create their own share that they could control. So that's why you do that. But once again, if you just make that change willy-nilly, you're not going to be able to use anything.
Yep.
So make sure you have that set properly. Otherwise, try turning back on admin and tighten
the scope.
Tighten the security in other areas.
Dear Shane and Lex, is it considered best practice to replace any packages we have with their new auto-download package versions? Sincerely, Chris J.
Chris, I would ask, why wouldn't you? I mean, unless you want to retain an old version, I would definitely do it.
There are some environments requirements that they run specific versions of Java or specific versions of Chrome, Firefox. The best practice comes down to you. If you want to maintain the latest versions, then use the auto downloads.
Absolutely.
If you want to create your own packages and kind of mirror that, then you can use those auto downloads as templates if you want. But yeah, if you want to keep up to the latest version, set it and forget it. Use auto downloads. If you're going to create your own, then I would recommend that. That's if you want to stay at the same version or the latest version. Pardon me.
I just was noticing we did this last week. You must stay at the old Java. So, and again, yeah, that's one way you can exclude them from getting the new Java.
Yeah, in this case, if you watch that webcast, we actually used the condition in deploy for Java. This might even be that same package.
I don't think, yeah, it is, because we got a pre.
In that same package, we said the properties detail or
Conditions.
Yeah, conditions. Thank you. Nope, this is a different one. Yeah, we actually said only deploy if it's not a member of that collection. Yeah, that's cool. Wait, good memory. You remembered back a week.
It's
You
gone
beat
now.
every
It's gone.
previous record
it's
you had.
absolutely gone. Yeah, Chris is
Yeah.
good.
Thank you. I do have a thought. So about that, I actually wonder if he's talking about one upgrading prior to auto download. When we put it into the folder, when we convert their auto deployment packages to the auto download packages. I think there's been some confusion with some people whether those are different than the new version of the auto downloads, which they're not. Anyone that's now been moved to that folder, they're the same as if you were to go get them from the auto download, just like you would from the package library. So if that's what he's talking about, no, they're identical to if you were to go do it again.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
point. Good point.
Good
Thanks,
point.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Do you have any other questions?
Dear Shane and Lex, we currently have a number of nested deployments and have just started using the auto-download feature on packages. When the packages auto-download, the listing of that package nested in others keeps the previous name of the last package. Although trivial, it can sometimes get confusing until you open the nested package to see it has updated. Can this be fixed? Thanks, Ian S.
Yeah, that is a known bug. Unless if somebody from our automation department, like Colby or something, wants to pipe in, we are aware of that. So as you mentioned, the nested package will show you nest Java 8 151. That gets updated. That nesting title still shows 151 8 151, but if you look at the what it's actually installing is the next version. Yes, it is an annoyance. We are aware of that. That will be fixed. So until then, but basically we'd recommend that you just upgrade to keep up to date, because we are aware of that and it will be addressed. Oh, and sorry, by the way.
And sorry.
Dear Shane and Lex, is there a way in inventory to periodically check if a computer is online, and if not, initiate a wake-on-lan? Thanks, Cameron F.
There's the answer is yes, but it's probably not the way you're thinking. In other words, there's not a feature that has that label. Hey, check to see if a computer's online, and then wake it up if it's not. What you're going to want to do is attack this from a scheduling point of view, and but keep in mind this could give you the results that you're not necessarily anticipating. Okay, so go to your options and preferences in inventory. I'm sorry, boy, we've upgraded that. Go to scan profiles. So let's say that you want to. We'll look at computer info. Computer info doesn't scan applications. It doesn't scan services. It's just scans basic
Tell me about the
computer.
computer,
Yeah. Let's double click on this to edit it. And in triggers, go to scan age, and then change this. This is, once again,
Yeah.
you can
You're
do
going to
some-
get what you're asking
yeah.
for, so be ready
Say,
for it. So-
do 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Here comes the caveat.
Let me make sure. Wake them. Okay, you know what? take it back. So this one, what this one will do is, I might be having a brain fart here. You might want to attack this a different way. Okay, there's actually a different way you want to do this. Right now, Colby's probably having a freaking heart attack.
No,
Going,
look.
what are you
Yeah, he
doing?
is.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that's a different.
Okay.
Actually, okay. So what you're going to want to do? Don't do it from scan profiles. I take that back. Let's go back to computer info. What you're going to want to do is attack this. Let me just delete that. You're going to want to attack this from deploy, and in deploy, have a schedule that goes out to computers that are offline. So if we go over here to deploy, and all you do is we create a new package that says, a new package here, and in these offline settings, we're going to say send a wake-on-lan. Now, obviously, your computer has to be able to respond to wake-on-lan. There's always those external dependencies. And then what you're doing here, it doesn't even really matter.
Do it
you just
dir.
have to have a step. You could do just a quick command, and then just run something like dir or something that's just hello. It doesn't matter. Basically, what you're doing is you're setting this as a schedule, and there's a collection for offline computers. You could say if there's a computer that's offline, send this every hour or something, and just wake them up. So that's how I would attack it. I'm sorry, I had to think about that for a second. I was attacking it the wrong way. The longest possible answer
Ever.
to that question. I apologize, but I would attack it from deploy. It will require that you have PDQ inventory configured in order to use that.
And our final question of the day, I attempted to create a package that would run an NSLookup on all my devices and a ping and return a text file to my computer with all the details. It seemed like it was grabbing my IP address for every device instead of theirs. Also, is there a way to grab the IP address of a device without pinging through PDQ? Is this more a situation for a report or no? Thanks, Chris J.
Chris, I'm going to ask Chris. Chris, would you like to address this one? I've got an answer, but I think that yours is actually going to be better, to be honest.
I'm actually still just catching up. Sorry, I was actually following up on another thing that I was doing, so I apologize.
Go ahead and read that.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
Number one, if you're returning the IP address of your computer, what variable are you using? Are you using a built-in variable? What is your we would need to, in order to answer that question, for me, I need to look at that package and see exactly what it's executing and how you're writing that file. And are you appending to a log file, etc. There's going to be a couple of ways up this mountain. But in order to for me to answer that question, I need to look at the PDQ package that you're talking about. Did you look at that question, Chris? Chris?
Yes, I'm reading it right now. In fact, I'm actually
Formulating something with
Crying
corgis
thoughts.
and
Yeah,
PowerShell.
it's running NSLookup on all my devices via package. This is something I do, but I do it from a tool with inventory, because usually I'm trying to find out if this machine I'm trying to look at is truly this machine that I'm trying to look at, right? And so I have a few tools where I do that. I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah, if you're going to use that from, hit up our support site. If you're doing this from deploy out there, or inventory, if you could try to do this from inventory, like Chris is mentioning.
Got a tool you can
Well, inventory runs as a local system. Even though you have your scan user, it actually executes as a local system, which you in almost every environment will not be able to write back to a central server.
True.
There's some settings you can do to change that, but ask that question to our support site, and then or post it on our forums. You probably get some different suggestions, but once again, we need to look at the current package to answer that question authoritatively in the context that you're asking it.
I'm sorry.
Chris, yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to go off on a little more of a tangent and say it depends what you're doing. If you're just trying to get the IP address without using PDQ, yeah, you can do that with many commands in command line or from PowerShell. I was going to say so, but anyway, yeah, carry on.
Carry on, my wayward son. We'll throw some left overture in there. That's for you, Kelly. All right, hey, everybody, thanks for PDQ&A. A lot of good questions, and definitely thanks to Colby specifically, and Chris over here, Chris for answering. But Colby, thanks for buddy. If you have any other questions, hit up our support forums. We will see you guys
On the flip side.
next week.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Big congratulations to Patrick H. and Ethan H., winners of PDQ Swag. Also, Matthew R., winner of our PDQ Floppy Coaster. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. If you have any further questions, feel free to hit up our support forums. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.